Oh, hi. My name is Elizabeth Sankey. I'm a product manager at Vestiaire Collective, which is a C2C secondhand marketplace. Unlike classic e-commerce where inventory is structured and predictable, we have individual people uploading their products to our site all day, every day, which is very exciting. But we have over 5 million items in our catalog, and what we've learned over time is our customers don't like to be very specific when they search. They treat it more like going to a store. You know, when you go to a vintage store and you look through every single piece to make sure you don't miss anything. So when it comes to search, we're not just helping users find a product, we're helping them dig, we're helping them find treasures, and it's a real discovery experience, balancing intent with exploration. And that means that relevance isn't as simple as optimizing for clicks or conversions or even just adding in fancy LLMs to our ranking strategy. We have to think about it a little bit further than that. While our search use case might be relatively unique, the qualitative validation practices we've adopted can benefit any search organization. I'll try to extrapolate to PLN's great examples earlier when I can. These principles are designed to help build better search experience and go beyond numbers. I want to walk you through how we validate search improvements step by step, from understanding user behavior to algorithm design to internal testing and continuous iteration, and how we connect these steps to performance KPIs to understand their real world impact. If there's one takeaway that I would love for y'all to have, it's data gives us direction, it gives us validation, it lets us know that we're going in the right place, but user insights is what makes us right. You can interpret data any way you want to. You can also interpret user feedback any way you want to, but I'll get more into that in a little bit. First, a disclaimer. Some of what I'm going to talk about today might seem like super common sense. I'm not a data science. I work with very talented data scientists, but I'm not going to try and explain to you how we're using Gen AI and LLMs at Vestiaire today. We have a few internal applications, and we're starting to integrate it into our search. But understanding users, testing changes, and all of these things have become a real cornerstone in actually validating the changes we're making to our relevance, even when it comes to LLMs. And if nothing else, I just hope that you take away from this that it's maybe a good reminder to keep your finger on the pulse of human behavior in the world of AI and LLMs and machine learning. So, before we even get to validating algorithmic changes or retrainings, there's an important lesson that we've learned at Vestiaire, and that's that metrics alone are super misleading. Not to be a conspiracy theorist, but anytime it seems like our search is performing super well, we don't trust it. Let's say we've optimized our rankings to favor items that receive a certain percentage of likes over impressions. This isn't even AI related, it's just like a general relevance piece. On paper, this makes sense. Highly engaged items should be more relevant. If I'm searching for a Chanel bag and I'm seeing the most recent listed Chanel bags that have gotten a lot of likes over the past few days, those should be the ones that I look at first, right? Sure, but we might be alienating some of our power users who come back to our platform every day and don't want to see the same search results over and over again every time they go to the same search, which, believe it or not, is a search pattern that we have. Obviously, this is a very generalized example, but you can imagine how it gets more and more complex the more we add in things like language learning models and other fun things into our ranking strategy. It's something we're actually going through right now. Our overall KPIs are super healthy. Our click-through rate has been going through the roof. Every change we make, we're like, great, this is excellent. But internally, we've been getting feedback very recently that some of our search results don't feel right, which sounds really dumb, but we're in this platform all day, every day. And we know when the catalog results make sense and we know when they don't. And when it comes to personalized results, when it comes to ranking strategies, when it comes to making sure people who refuse to query more than a few words on a catalog of 5 million items, you need to take these things seriously. And if we're getting the feedback internally over and over again, it's something we need to dig into. So we're always going to map feedback like that back to KPIs. We want to make sure that if we feel like something is wrong, can we validate that with data? But it doesn't mean that we're not going to look at something or dismiss it just because we can't see it in the metrics. Continuing to optimize for metrics blindly or based on user actions works. I mean, it works, of course. If you're trying to get more people to click and you're optimizing for that, that's great. And you can do that as long as you'd like to, but it can lead to dead ends. Either in performance, where gains will flatten out over time, or in user experience, where search starts to feel stale, predictable. And that's why qualitative validation, actually testing and learning from users, is so critical. Okay, Elizabeth, get to the point. Like, what are you talking about? So how do we ensure our algorithms reflect what real-world users need? Where we start is understanding our users. So, I mean, any good product org should be talking to their users, right? We should be, and should, but a lot of us don't have time to do this. But with search, and especially with things like ranking, it's a really difficult nut to crack. So we try at Vestiaire to talk to at least one customer per week. Some weeks we do better than others. But the goal here is to understand what patterns and mental models our customers are developing. We can't just flat out go into a call with a user and be like, how do you search? Because then they're already going to start thinking about how they're searching. So what we try to do is we ask them to think about the last time they came to our platform and walk us through it. And that's pretty much what I'll ask. And then I'll let them take the reins. I'll let them share their screen with me. And I'll ask clarifying questions here or there. But my goal is really to understand naturally how a user approaches our platform. And sometimes they don't go to search very much. It's pretty rare, but it's more to just understand, do people come with intent? Are they looking for something in particular? What kind of patterns can we see? Do people just come because they're bored? All of this information helps us create guardrails when we're trying to think of algorithmic changes and models that we'd like to build based on hard inputs, based on user metrics that we're going to leverage to improve our ranking. So, I mean, for instance, I don't know, when I'm talking to, that's a screenshot of me talking to a customer. When I'm talking to this guy, and he's sort of taking me through, I ask him to explain to me, as if I don't know the website, what's going on. And he might mention something like, oh, and I think that these results are personalized to me, because people think about that now, but maybe we didn't personalize that section. Or maybe he's saying, oh, I don't really like these results, but it is a personalized section. He doesn't know, but I do. And understanding how people are taking in our platform, how people are thinking about search, even from a generic perspective. If people don't know our platform super well, I'll have them take me somewhere else so that I can just think about, or I can understand how they think about search. These insights are super, super important because they sort of expose the gaps between how we're designing our search to work and how our customers actually experience it and how they think it should work. Not to say that the way that they think it should work should be how it works, but it's really helpful to understand those gaps so that we can fill them in. It's not just about understanding behavior. Like I mentioned before, it gives us the guardrails against which our data scientists can play and experiment. They can test out new algorithm training concepts. If we observe anecdotally how customers get distracted or inspired by different results that they weren't expecting to see, which is not something we would know from a click. We know that because I see a guy scrolling on a page and says, ooh, this is interesting. That translates on the back end to a click. I don't know what the intent was behind that click. I just know that click belongs to that search, but I don't know that actually he was looking for a brown blazer and he got excited by a pair of pants. I wouldn't know that unless I'm talking to the customers. So all these things help us have a little bit more finesse when it comes to how we take user inputs into our ranking strategy. Probably the most critical part to how we validate our search changes before we go live, and that was the theme that I was given by Dustin, is internal testing and dog fooding, which again, this sounds super straightforward, but if we take PLN's example of the CIA database and I'm asking a question about Vietnam, is the response I'm getting, does that even make sense? I mean, it's silly, but when you're looking at data all day, every day, and you're building these models and you're seeing results and the results kind of make sense, but you're an engineer and you have a very specific view on fashion, and we have an entire company full of men and women who live and breathe fashion, it kind of makes sense, and it's pretty cheap for us to send it out internally, ask them to use it for us, and give us their feedback. It's the best way to just know, finger in the air, does this feel right, before we even need to get to something like A/B testing or shadow testing, which will, again, give us those metric inputs of if people are engaging with it, but doesn't let us know how it feels as a search. I feel like a hippie, like talking about how search results feel, but that's really what the qualitative data helps us understand. If I had to choose only one practice to start with, it would definitely be dog fooding. I assume that, from a product building perspective, we all try to do this, but especially when it comes to search and algorithmic changes, it really helps getting people from outside your organization to play with it too, before you have to sort of use your users as guinea pigs. Let's say we've built a new ranking model. We want to test it. We've tested it internally. We're using our user inputs. It's great. We're ready to go ahead and get started. We will generally run an A/B test. And it's at this stage where I think it's the hardest to get qualitative feedback. And in an ideal world, we would have those sort of intercept surveys that say, did you find what you're looking for? Do you like this experience? But A, those are annoying, and B, they're kind of expensive to implement depending on what it is you're trying to figure out. So we can't always get qualitative feedback on the part of the experience that our customers can't see. And so the only way forward really that we tend to do is we'll test if it works well from a metric standpoint, because again, we need to map the performance to KPIs as well. We'll roll it out, and then as we continue to talk to our customers, we'll see if any feedback changes. What I've learned over time is the people that know our platform well can tell when things are going to change, or when they have changed, or they will call it out themselves. It's not something they'd ever write a customer review about. It's not something that would ever come up as an incident because something feels wrong. But when you're talking to your customers regularly, it is something that I found that they will bring up. So we just do this over and over again. It's boring, but it's also fun, because talking to customers is fun, and using their feedback to build the experiences they're expecting is fun. Understanding why they search the way they do can be a little mind-boggling, but also fun. And so we leverage their feedback in our design phase when we're thinking about changing algorithms, changing the way our ranking works. We obviously leverage internal testing. We get user feedback, and then we refine, and we do it ad nauseum over and over again. And of course, we marry this with KPIs, click-through rate, bounce rate, all the great ones that PLN mentioned, but click-through rate can increase and things can still feel wrong. I know it from experience. Or click-through rate might increase because impressions are going down. Are impressions going down? Why are they going down? Okay, well, do we have less traffic? I don't know. Like, you can get yourself into a tailspin about how individual metrics measure the success of your test. And so talking to your customers, understanding the vibes of how they're feeling, and understand why they do what they do on your platform is key to making any algorithmic change. That's pretty much it.
All right, do we have any questions for Elizabeth?
Thank you. One question, you mentioned recruiting users, and you mentioned trying not to bias them with your own perspective. So I'd like to ask you about those two. How do you recruit users? Do you incentivize them? How do you keep them updated? Is it the same users again and again? And second, do you have tips to not push your own perspective when doing those interviews?
Sure thing. Thank you for the good question. So in terms of recruitment, it depends on what it is we're trying to figure out. For these generic conversations that we try to have on a rolling basis, we recruit through a platform like user testing. And so that's actually great for our purposes, because we don't necessarily, we don't know if they're going to know what Vestiaire is. We can use a screener that kind of ensures they do, but people lie on screeners, I've learned. It's easy enough, and they get paid through that platform. We pay that platform. But if it's something really specific where we want to reach out to customers that we know have performed XYZ action on the website, we'll recruit internally. We'll incentivize them with a voucher code. And in terms of bias, it's very difficult. You have to show a lot of self-restraint because you might get really excited. You might want to get specific feedback about a very specific change that you've made. But unless it's like really like which experience do you like better, you kind of have to just ask them to tell you what they notice and be zen. And if they bring it up, great. And if they don't, then that's information that you have for next time.
What other questions do we have?
So I understand how you would leverage a sort of survey data to measure that improvement. Are you able to use the qualitative data to then measure improvement?
So yes and no. I think I would consider survey data to be qualitative data, like app reviews, all of that is qualitative data because yes, you can have a mass survey, but at the same time, it's not the same thing as like millions of users coming on your website and having analytical data. However, when it comes to user interviews and things like that, the only way maybe not the only way, but in my experience, the way to understand that sentiment over time is just to keep talking to customers over time. You're not going to get like okay, I released this feature unless you're talking to them specifically about it, but that's not really what we do. We try to talk to them about their general experience to get themes and the mental models that we need to make our next choices. And you'll see, I mean, if you talk to 6 customers, inevitably 3 of them are going to say the same thing about something. And so eventually over time you'll pick up. So for instance, we added personalization to our new ins feed I think at the beginning of last year. And after we released that, I started talking to customers maybe 3 months after that. And the people that know our platform said, oh yeah, like I've noticed that all these are like, it's way more relevant to what I like. I didn't ask them to tell me that. It's just something that they offered up. So it's not like a silver bullet when it comes to user interviews, but it can help you understand if you're going in the right direction or not.
And do you map how long they've been a customer for?
Yeah. So, I mean, ideally we'd be talking equally to people that are brand new users and are more engaged users, but as it goes when it comes to recruiting people to talk to you, and this is the same at Algolia. I remember when I was a PM here too, but generally it's your more engaged customers that are going to want to talk to you. So it's really hard to recruit people who aren't super engaged, and those are the people we want to talk to the most. But the way that we proxy that is by talking to people that have never been on our platform at all.
We have time for one final question. All right.